The working class and the employing class have nothing in common. There can be no peace so long as hunger and want are found among millions of the working people, and the few who make up the employing class have all the good things of life.
The inequality evident between the working class and the employing class is unforgivable. The workers of this world produce the entirety of society's goods and services, and what do the employers do? They sit back and watch, loath to dirty their own hands, but advantageously capitalizing on the spoils of their subordinates. Employers refuse to even acknowledge the labor of the working class, withholding payment and compensation from their workers when those workers are hurt or even killed in servitude. The problems this injustice causes reach far deeper and heavier than this, however. The hard-working individuals are left behind, grounded and abandoned by the very capitalism that promised to give them wings.
And this inequality will only worsen given time. As the employing class continues to exploit the labor of the workers, it will only grow more wealthy, more controlling, more powerful. Their victims are then left to fend for themselves in a world where they were guaranteed rights. Our forefathers built these great United States out of their very blood, sweat, and tears because they believed in a country based on individuality, on opportunity, on freedom. How aghast would they be with the United States today? The citizens that make up this great nation are working long, grueling hours, and for what? 20 to 40% less than a living wage? Our people cannot even support themselves with such a way of life. How could they be expected to support a family, an American dream? Where is this opportunity they were promised? Our people, our society, our nation has become deplorable.
Labor conditions in the United States are more inhospitable than ever before. As the economic gap between the working class and the employing class widens, the employing class feels emboldened to visit horrors upon the working class like none we have ever seen. Unconscionably long hours, dangerous equipment, and a lack of safety measures all contribute to a work environment that actively jeopardizes very real working class lives. When a person is subjected to 10-hour workdays, 12-hour workdays of the steel industry, without any hope of just benefit, it inevitably takes a toll.
Not least in our concerns is the horrific exploitation of our children. Unregulated child labor is running rampant in our country at greater levels than ever before, and it puts the lives and happiness of our children, our future, at risk. As of 1900, 2 million American children aged 10 to 15 were working in mills, in factories, or on city streets. 2 million American children were having the most important years of their lives stolen from them to service the unfeeling drive of capitalism. And that number is only growing. We came to this country so that our children would be able to grow up and pursue their dreams in peace, happiness, and prosperity. Now, the very engine that the employing class told us would bring that vision to fruition is preventing it from coming to pass. This deception has gone on too long.
Let us be clear. The current system's violence toward the working class is far from metaphorical. Every day that this injustice continues is another day that extinguishes the hope and potential of another American, another human. Holding workers to impossible standards and depriving us of our livelihoods when we fail to meet them puts us in grave danger. Each year, tens of thousands of workers are executed by the overpowering machine of capitalism. If workers so much as attempt to voice disagreement, they are immediately silenced by the heavy stare of death. Remember the riots at Carnegie Steelworks. Remember the Haymarket affair. In the last few decades alone, too many people have been cruelly crushed under the heel of the institution, simply for exercising their right to a voice.
So the workers were told they could have a voice of sorts through the American Federation of Labor. This AFL may appear to be advantageous, but make no mistake, the American Federation of Labor is doing nothing to alleviate the crises of capitalism while claiming to advance the status of the working class. There is an irrepressible conflict between capital and labor. By excluding the common worker, the African American worker, and the female worker, the AFL is failing to live up to their commitment to the working class, especially in the wake of industrialization, when more unskilled workers are suffering under the dreadful yoke of capitalism than ever before. It is critical now more than ever to integrate these workers into the march toward equality.
Thus, we must reject the AFL and what it stands for. What has the American Federation of Labor done that justifies its existence? Organized an incomplete portion of the American workforce? Bargained with the very businesses that caused our problems in the first place? Abandoned its members whenever those members came to it for help? Its efforts have accomplished nothing, and so we must take a more drastic approach. We mustn't simply reject the AFL or the corporations, but capitalism itself.
The most effective and prudent solutions to the intrinsic issues of a capitalist system involved direct action at the point of production. However, the time-honored method of the traditional strike endangers the workers involved more than it does the bosses. The bosses, with their disgustingly large financial reserves, can easily resist a long walkout. Meanwhile, particularly if the workers are unskilled and thus replaceable in the boss's eyes, the boss can simply switch them out for a scabbed workforce that is then picked at until it bleeds.
Yet these unskilled workers are not protected by the American Federation of Labor, silencing their voices.
Instead, we as a working class must seek alternatives to the heavy-handed traditional strike that takes financial power away from bosses while keeping workers on the job. Slowdowns are protests in which workers deliberately reduce the productivity of businesses while continuing to collect wages. Sick-ins are protests in which all or most of the workers call in sick at the same time, effectively incapacitating a business for that period. Good work strikes take place when workers fear that loss of their services will hurt the customers, many of whom are also working class, more than the bosses. Workers provide better or more affordable services to customers at the boss's expense. Sit-down strikes are short strikes of symbolic significance in which productivity is stopped, but not for so long that workers are jeopardized by the situation. Whistleblowing is the tactic of notifying the public as to the truth of the horrific working conditions being perpetuated within a business. All of these tactics keep agency in the hands of the worker while still aligning with the intended goals of direct action.
So we call to you, worker of the United States, instrument of tyranny no longer. Cast off the shackles of the American Federation of Labor, the wage system, the machine of capitalism itself. The failure of that machine is inevitable, as living costs continue to rise and the minimum wage fails to follow. A world post-capitalism is a world infinitely more worth living in. It is the duty of the global worker class to not only look toward the destruction of capitalism, but also toward the days that come after. Unchecked violence in the aftermath of our victory is no victory at all, and a complete victory is the cessation of all governmental and political functions and the institution of an industrial commonwealth.
Join the true labor movement, the one that includes every worker, regardless of race, gender, national origin, craft, or skill. History has made it clear that fragmentation in the working class allows the insidious messages of the employing class to seep into the cracks. Therefore, the only real hallmark of progress is a globally united worker class across industries and cultures, infinitely strong in its togetherness.
It is only with the combined will of all the workers in the world that we can finally break free of this vicious system. And by break, we do mean break. We have seen that existing frameworks of political participation and peaceful protest will prove ineffective in combating the abuses of the employing class. We must break and burn and tear if necessary, whether that means strikes, slowdowns, or occasional armed protests. We must use the flame of our hope to cast a light into the darkest of places and destroy the most established of structures. From the ashes of the capitalist machine, a new order must rise.
Join the industrial workers of the world today. A wobbly future awaits.